All right, so some interesting developments when it comes to Nintendo with the Switch 2 and what they're planning for 2026 and 2027. It looks like we could be getting a lot more surprises than maybe what some people were anticipating based on what they've said recently at their investor meeting. Plus, we have an update when it comes to how Nintendo feels about their performance with the Nintendo Switch 2 sales and how it's far exceeded what they were even expecting and what they plan to do coming up when it comes to games to help stimulate the Nintendo Switch 2 heading into its second calendar year here. Let's jump into what Mr. Shuntaro Furukawa had to say about the Nintendo Switch 2 and how they have new unannounced titles ready that they are preparing for the holidays and early 2027. Quote, while it would be ideal to deliver new titles more frequently and in a more timely manner, as you pointed out, software development periods have become longer compared to the past. Even under these circumstances, we will continue to implement various initiatives such as refining our development systems and processes so that many titles can be enjoyed on the Nintendo Switch 2. Furthermore, regardless of whether it is considered a major title or not, we are preparing a variety of new titles for the Nintendo Switch 2. In addition, for the lineup for the second half of this fiscal year, we have prepared new titles beyond those already announced, and we will provide details at the appropriate time. So what he's saying here is pretty cool because one, it touches on kind of the investors obviously wanting them to just put out Mario and Zelda 24/7, and he says like, hey look, compared to Switch 1, things do take a bit longer, but here's what we're doing. We are refining the process development systems, getting games like Star Fox, for example, a remake. You can spend some time, but that's not going to be the biggest type of title. But it can kind of help in between the bigger games like Pokemon Pocopia and like, let's say Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, or even a game like Splatoon Raiders that is a concept of Salmon Run but expanded. But you probably don't need that full Splatoon team working on something like that. That's kind of more of a side project for a team within Nintendo while they work on the big Splatoon 4 game as well. So I think that's what they're doing right now to help with the process and development of getting games out to have a consistent flow of games. And that's why I said in this next part here, whether it's a major title or not, they're preparing a variety of new titles for the Switch 2. And that's pretty much happened all throughout this year. There's been a variety of different titles, whether they're bigger or they're smaller, for people to play on the system. Biggest game so far though has been Pokemon Pocopia and obviously Tomodachi Life. Interesting thing about Tomodachi Life, Nintendo says that 40% of people playing that game are on the Nintendo Switch 2. So that kind of might be like a low-key system seller for Switch 2, despite it being a Switch 1 native game. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about here are the new big games, the unannounced stuff that he talks about here, the second half lineup that they have prepared new titles beyond what's already been announced. That is obviously going to be huge when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2's second calendar year. Now, Nintendo, we're going to talk about how they did when it comes to the 19 million plus and how it far exceeded what they're looking for, but obviously you need to continue on here. Now, a couple different things here with that. The price hike is going into effect in Japan late May, and here in the US and West, it's going to be September 1st. So Nintendo is forecasting lower sales than what they had the previous fiscal, just because you never know what's going to happen. Obviously, you increase the price of the system. A lot of people felt that it was already kind of pricey to begin with, especially when compared to the Nintendo Switch 1. So that's going to pose some problems when it comes to selling the system, and that's the reason why they went down about 3 million units from where they did before, because you cannot anticipate everyone wanting to spend $500 plus the software. That is expensive. So definitely it's good to be a bit conservative here and say, okay, 16 million units seems about right. Now, if they hit that 16 million, that's still 36 million plus for the first couple years, actually right underneath 2 years, which would be outpacing the Nintendo Switch 1 when it comes to sales. So still very good. But the big titles that he talks about here, the unannounced ones, those are going to be the biggest things that's going to help be a driver for the Nintendo Switch 2. They've got to make sure that they have the big titles, these surprises. That's one thing that Nintendo always does, I think better than any other developer out there, is surprise people with new titles and new gameplay styles with some of their favorite franchises. Nobody could have anticipated that Donkey Kong Bonanza would play the way that Donkey Kong Bonanza plays, or even that the Pokemon Company, along with Koei Tecmo and Nintendo, would make something like Pokemon Pokopia. So bringing new experiences that really just, I would say, shake the foundations of certain franchises is something that Nintendo is incredibly good at, and incredibly good at selling, as both of those games, Pokemon Pokopia and Donkey Kong Bonanza, have combined to sell over 8 million units on a system with about 20 million units out there. That's very good and better than what most other systems can manage when it comes to titles. So I do think that going forward, obviously big games that we do know about, Pokemon Winds and Waves, that's going to be a massive driving factor, but we don't know if that's coming out before the end of March next year. I don't know if that's factored into what they think they're going to sell, but that's going to be a big game. The Dusk Bloods, we have to see how that works out. Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, we have to see how that game's going to be. I think that one's going to do really well. Plus, we still have Star Fox, plus we still have Splatoon Raiders. There's a lot of good games coming, but there's other stuff as well. Will they show that next big new 3D Mario game? I think that's really what investors and a lot of people are looking for, is okay, where's that next big 3D Mario? Mario kind of defines the system, it sets the tone, and that's the crazy thing about the Nintendo Switch 2. It's doing as good as it's doing, which we'll talk about in just a bit. It's doing as good as it's doing, despite not having that next big new 3D Zelda, that next big new 3D Mario. There hasn't been Smash Brothers announced. There hasn't been a brand new Animal Crossing game. Obviously, Pokemon, when it comes to a big 2-version gen Pokemon game, that's not out yet. Some of their biggest system sellers, actually, their biggest system sellers, have still not hit the system yet. And even if you want to count like a real big Splatoon game, not a spin-off like Splatoon Raiders, but the actual big multiplayer competitive and all that, that's 6 big system selling type of games that are not even on the platform yet they've been able to outpace the Nintendo Switch 1 that had a brand new Legend of Zelda game and a big brand new 3D Mario game within the first 9 months of the system's launch. Plus, we still haven't got Monolith Soft's title either, which I do think that Monolith Soft's title is one of those games that he's talking about here, which I want to talk about that just a bit more here. So with Monolith Soft's title, that can be something. Obviously, Monolith does not move mountains when it comes to selling systems for Nintendo platforms, but what it does is that it shows, I would say, the technical expertise to exploit what Nintendo offers to the best of their abilities, and it makes other people say, wow, this system can really do a lot more than what we've seen from maybe some developers that are making similar type of games on other platforms, expansive open world games. Monolith Soft's game on the Switch 2, now that Nintendo has jumped up this much, this can be a landmark style of game that really gets more people into the system or into what Monolith Soft is doing now that they kind of have a bit more power to realize their ambition. I think this is more than enough for Monolith Soft when it comes to what their resources are, what they can do. Obviously, having more powerful system is good, but at the same time, sometimes you want to have some of those constraints in order for you to breed new innovation. And that's something that Monolith Soft has done really well on weaker systems that Nintendo's had in the past. But I think that the Switch 2 gives them the perfect balance for this upcoming unannounced games and all that. I do think that this gives them the perfect balance to get something incredibly impressive within budget that they can make in a timely fashion. And the last time that we got something from Monolith Soft, it was really Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3, that was back in 2022. So we're going on the 4-year anniversary of that game. They haven't made anything else since then. I think they've been making their new game, which they actually even stated that they're making their new RPG, and I think it's going to be ready to be revealed. Not saying that it's launching this year, but I think it could be revealed this year, and it could launch sometime next year, or it can be revealed in 2027 and launch sometime that year. So I think that's something to where they should probably do like a blitz campaign with that, to where you announce it, and it is released in a short, timely fashion. Don't make us wait too long for that. Monolith Soft titles kind of ride off of that initial wow factor, so announce it when it's close to the release, and I think you can maximize what Monolith Soft can help when it comes to getting people into the Nintendo Switch 2 buying the system, because we still need that Monolith Soft game for the people that specifically play Nintendo platforms for the Monolith Soft big RPGs like Fire Emblem. So we'll see what they have for us as well. So what do you guys think when it comes to what Nintendo had to say here about the unannounced titles? I think we could see Mario. I think we could see Monolith Soft's new game as well. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, let's talk about this next topic here. We're going to get into what Nintendo had to say about the Switch 2 sale, because there's been a lot of talk about it. There's been talk about their stocks and all this type of stuff that really comes down to all that matters is the games and the fact that there is a long and good adoption and that there is a nice adoption rate for people picking up the system. So let's talk about that. So Nintendo has stated that their first year of Switch 2 sales has far exceeded their expectations. This is according to Mr. Furukawa at the most recent investor meeting Q&A. And he says, quote, "When the Nintendo Switch 2 was released in June of last year, we made efforts to expand our production capacity so that as many people as possible could get their hands on it. In addition, thanks to the interest we received from many customers through experience events held around the world before the release, sales in the first year of release far exceed our expectations. As a result, the number of units sold up to the end of the previous fiscal year ending March 2026 reached 19.86 million units, exceeding both initial sales forecast of 15 million units and the revised forecast of 19 million units announced at the time of the second quarter earnings announcement. The 19.86 million units sold in the first year is an exceptional level compared to any hardware we have released in the past. We believe this large number is the result of the combination of factors, including the fact that we have released the Nintendo Switch 2 while many customers were enjoying the Nintendo Switch, and that it's easy for customers to transition from the Nintendo Switch 1 because it can also play Nintendo Switch software. At the time of the third quarter earnings announcement, we explained that while the holiday season was strong in Japan, overseas sales, especially in Europe and the US, were somewhat weaker than expected. However, after that, the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Switch 2 Edition in January and the free update for Animal Crossing New Horizons boosted the usage of both Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. Furthermore, Pokemon Pokopia, a Nintendo Switch 2 software released in March, increased sales not only in Japan but also overseas, contributing to hardware sales. Given these circumstances, we believe the Nintendo Switch 2 will be able to enter its second year in good shape. And he's talking about second year when it comes to calendar year, because obviously the Nintendo Switch 2 is completing its first year and then going into, let's just say, a year and 1 month, 2 month, 3 months to the end, so a year and a half. So I do think what he's saying here, obviously correct when it comes to the Switch 2 sales. 19.86 million is better than any other platform that Nintendo's had, and actually the best for any platform within the first 10 months or so of its launch. They have a 16.5 million forecast for the following year here up until March of 2027. So I think that they're actually going to hit that, because if the Ocarina of Time remake pans out, on top of that, you look at just like the market, just overall, the competition, a lot of price increases. Yes, Nintendo did increase their price, which is not great, but it's still cheaper than the Xbox Series X. The S is $100 cheaper, but obviously people necessarily aren't buying that for the most part. And the PlayStation 5 is obviously a lot more expensive at this point. So I do think that Nintendo's in a pretty good position, especially if all the software that we talked about when it comes to Splatoon Raiders and Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, the Dustbloods, Ocarina, all this stuff is good, it comes out and people are enjoying the content, then I do think that they're going to be able to hit that mark. And I do think that having some sales or some deals or some nice bundles maybe later in the year, that can also help as well. There's also the interesting factor of the FOMO-ish type of thing. Since they are increasing the price by September 1st here in the US, I do think that there's going to be an uptick of people maybe buying the system a bit earlier than maybe what they would have thought, or getting the family systems for the holidays before that price increase. So I do think that you're going to see a nice gradual uptick in these sales heading into that September 1st price increase, because in Japan we are seeing people line up. According to Genki over on Twitter, people are lining up to get the Nintendo Switch 2 because the price increase goes into effect there late May. So I do think that you're probably going to see a uptick in sales when it comes to some people buying it more than what they would have thought just because of that price increase. But yeah, I think that the biggest thing here obviously is getting out the big games. That's what's going to help stimulate when it comes to getting more people into the system and everything. And yeah, you need those big system sellers when it comes to a game like Pokemon Pocopia. I think that the Ocarina of Time remake, I think that can be it. And of course, some of those unannounced games that Nintendo hasn't talked about yet, I think those are going to be crucial. But even over the summer here, you need those second tier type of games to really stimulate the core gamers. Splatoon Raiders, Star Fox, Fire Emblem Fortunes Weave, the Dust Bloods. These are the type of games that are going to help throughout the summer and fall before we head into the big holiday season. So I'm excited to see what Nintendo has. Obviously, a Nintendo Direct can help out with that, whether they have big third-party titles to show off or first-party games. I do think that we're going to see some interesting stuff from them. And yeah, 19.86 million definitely far exceeded what Nintendo thought they were going to be able to do, because they initially said 15 million, and then they actually had to bump that up to 19 million, and then they were above 19 million. They did 860,000 units even above that. So right now at this point, considering those sales are at the end of March 2026, now that we're in May at this point, I definitely think that they're well over 20 million if you count worldwide sales. So definitely very good. So we should probably see 30 million by the end of the year. Then of course, probably around their 36 million plus or so when it comes to next year. So what do you guys think with everything here when it comes to Nintendo's sales numbers, in addition to what they have cooking up with unannounced games? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click the notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.